Hello, welcome everybody to another episode with Astrid, your APD, your dietitian with T, no C. And I am going to be having today Adrian Chavez for perhaps the third time in all this time that I've been doing IG Lives. And I've got a very sort of dynamic Q&A today because I'm going to present you a few sort of like challenges with Adrian as to doing or choosing this or that, or maybe for or against. Interesting way to address some of these controversial topics that we get to see all the time. And hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How's everything going over there? Nice to see you.
Good. What city are you in again?
Gold Coast
Okay.
in Australia.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, so I have like a few sort of challenging, controversial topics, and I'm going to present you options. So you kind of like based on research, based on the things that you think align with better health or something that you are for or against, you're going to give me your answer and sort of like justify why you choose that answer. So there are going to be like two sections. The first section is going to be about this or that. So you're going to choose one or the other. But obviously, as in health, like we know that there's always ambiguity and like context matters and depends. But kind of like want to challenge you to try to pick one of those options. And the second part is going to be for or against certain things. And I guess this is going to be super interesting. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So the first part is this or that. Now, I'm going to give you the first statement, and this is potatoes or legumes for satiety.
According to the research, potatoes.
Okay.
Personally, legumes.
Okay. Do you feel like is there anything particularly in potatoes that makes them more satiating than any other, based on
I
research?
think it's just the volume, and according to the studies that look at satiety index of foods, potatoes just rank up there. They're pretty much number one in many indexes, and it's just a voluminous food per calorie, and then also it's just satiating in terms of we feel better when we eat carbs a lot of times, and potatoes provide that.
If we were to choose between sweet potatoes and just white potatoes, which one would you choose?
Both. Like, I always go on the side of more variety in the diet. Everyone's, sweet versus white. I mean, there's differences, and they provide different nutrients. Sweet potatoes have more vitamin A, but, including both and according to your preferences, I think is ideal. But at the end of the day, including more variety into the diet is probably the best approach. And so I always recommend, like literally sometimes I'll just make both. Like I'll have one sweet potato and one regular potato, and I'll make them both in the same meal, as opposed to like, choosing one or the other.
In terms of better for your blood glucose, cold or hot? If we're thinking about potatoes, rice, pasta, starches, what would you say?
So they're better for your blood glucose once they've been cooled. They create resistant starches, which that resistant means that we can't digest it, so it doesn't get absorbed into our system, and so there's a couple of grams of glucose that isn't absorbed, and that also slows digestion a little bit and slows the blood glucose response. So when they are cooled, these resistant starches are created, but you can reheat them and they're still there. So you want to let them cool at some point. That is a helpful thing, and it's not a huge difference, but for a lot of people, it's easier just to meal prep anyway, or like prep some of that ahead of time in terms of like potatoes and rice and other starches. And so if you just prep a couple of servings ahead of time, put it in the fridge, you're going to increase those resistant starches, make it a little bit better in terms of blood glucose response, and something that I often recommend for clients as well.
Okay. When we think about green powders, would you choose more green powders or vegetables and fruit?
Definitely vegetables and fruit.
I know that there is a lot of people that hate vegetables or hate eating a really good variety of fruit and vegetables. In that case, on situation, what are some of these key points or suggestions that you would give this person to opt for a more healthful diet with more of these vegetables and green foods beyond just relying on supplements or green powders?
Yeah. So like tips for incorporating more into the diet is what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you really like, so I had this discussion quite a bit because, some people struggle, they're trying to force vegetables, and the reality is like, you don't necessarily have to eat a whole bunch of vegetables. You can meet most of your nutritional needs without eating a lot. Um, with that being said, it's not a good idea to avoid them altogether. There's health benefits, especially with specific ones like broccoli and tomatoes and mushrooms. And I know these are different, tomatoes are technically a fruit, mushrooms are technically or not technically, they are a mushroom, a fungus, but these are all classified as vegetables from a nutritional standpoint, all these different plant foods. But, avoiding those is not necessarily a good idea, but at the end of the day, we can meet our nutritional needs in a variety of ways. So it depends on the person, and sometimes, there's people who actually don't tolerate vegetables very well due to the insoluble fibers, and so they do have to just limit their vegetable intake in some cases. And I think we talked about this in the episode on gut health that we did on your podcast. But I've talked about this, a lot of people don't really understand fiber well enough. Like there's different types of fiber, and different types of fiber have different effects. And some people consuming high amounts of insoluble fibers, especially those with like inflammatory bowel disease, can actually worsen those symptoms. And so some of those people actually do better without consuming lots of vegetables. And so I don't necessarily always want to say like I'm one to always promote like, yes, eating vegetables is good overall, but we don't want to force everyone to eat vegetables, because I've worked with multiple clients, because I work with clients with GI issues and autoimmune conditions, and I've worked with a lot of people who just don't tolerate many vegetables well for a variety of reasons. And instead of forcing them, we just find other routes of meeting their nutrient needs, making sure that they're getting just nutrient-rich foods overall. And then sometimes I'll have clients track their calorie intake for a period of time, or their not calorie intake, but food intake overall, just to make sure that, they're just getting enough of the variety of nutrients that they might be getting from vegetables that they just need to be getting from other foods. I want to be clear, there are disadvantages, in my opinion, to avoiding vegetables, but in some cases, because nutrition is, what people benefit from is so different, and how people respond to various foods. In some cases, eating lots of vegetables is not necessarily a good thing. Now, if you're not in that category of people who has like a negative response to vegetables, then, it's really just learning how to cook them correctly. And a lot of people have negative associations with vegetables due to their exposures when they were kids and being forced to eat them and things like that. So for a lot of people, it's like a psychological thing. And so you just have to kind of hide them in their foods, hide them in your foods to get started, figure out ways to kind of work them in so you don't necessarily realize it, so you can develop a little bit of a taste for it. So at the end of the day, most vegetables, like, you can't not, like, when people tell me this, I don't like vegetables, that's a mental thing. Like, that's not reality, because vegetables taste completely different than one another. There's no way that you can just put all of those things into one category and then classify them all together. They taste different depending on how you cook them, depending on what you're eating, depending on how you spice them. You can't, like, there's no way that you can classify all those into one category. That's a mental thing when someone says that, and I see that quite often. Like, I've met many people that say, "Oh, I just don't like vegetables," and I'm like, this is just something you're telling yourself that you have to stop telling yourself, so that you can get past that barrier and start learning how to prepare them and enjoy them in various ways. And again, sometimes that starts with kind of hiding them. A lot of the same strategies that you have to do with kids sometimes, kind of hiding them, introducing them multiple times, trying them with condiments, trying them with different sauces, introducing them in a variety of ways. We don't like a lot of things when we first taste them. Like, almost no one likes coffee when you first drink it, but how many people are watching this that enjoy drinking coffee? Almost no one likes any type of alcohol. Like, it's like one of the nastiest things that anyone tastes, but a lot of times people learn to develop a taste for that because they want to. And so if you do something over and over again, and then you feel the effects of actually doing it, the positive health benefits of, eating the vegetables on a regular basis, like then you can develop a taste for it. You get that positive reinforcement from feeling good from eating them, and it just takes time though. If you're an adult and if you don't like vegetables and you're an adult, you're gonna have to really go through a process of learning how to like them, and it's not going to be easy, but I would definitely recommend it if you don't have any negative effects of eating them.
To me, what made the difference to get started on eating vegetables, because I was a picky eater as well, like I couldn't face eating like broccoli, like that big small tree in my plate, like it didn't look really good. So I just learned to use some of my favorite dressings like teriyaki sauce, or just combining things that I always started experimenting with, and I finally found, okay, I can eat all the vegetables I want, provided that I can add some sort of sweet and savory sauce to it. And that's the way I eat them. Like, don't give me just plain vegetables because I don't get to eat them, but you get to use a lot of different strategies to make them more palatable, spices, dressings, and you can cook to them with all your favorite foods, and actually can make a huge difference in how it tastes when you combine it with actual foods that you enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. And another important thing there is you mentioned like the plain vegetables. Like you shouldn't just be eating I mean, you can if you want to, but like just a side of broccoli. Like you can mix those things into your food as opposed to just eating it by itself on the side. And if we look at ethnic foods, that's how they do it. It's sauces and spices mixed in with the different, meats and whatever else is cooked, and it's all cooked together with good flavors. And I think I feel like it's a Western like Western diet type thing to just like when you eat vegetables, you just have it by itself. And I'm like, I'm never am I gonna sit down. Rarely, actually, I don't think I ever am. Am I just gonna sit down and eat broccoli? I'm gonna have it in pho or in a stir fry, or I'm going to, I'm gonna mix it into something that, like you said, has some sauces, has some spices, has some other things that balance out the various flavors. And I think that's the big thing is the way that people look at, quote unquote healthy eating. Like it doesn't have to be, a portion of chicken, a portion of rice, a portion of broccoli on your plate. Like it should look like the same foods that you were eating before, but made in a way that is more appropriate for your nutritional needs, which might need some, might require making a variety of adjustments to the way that you were eating things before.
I agree. Now, prebiotics or probiotics?
Prebiotics. We have most of the microbes that we need in our gut. Rarely do we need to supplement with probiotics. I think it's helpful to eat probiotic foods, eat foods that have, fermented foods that have microbes. There's definitely some data to support that, but taking probiotics can kind of shift the microbiome too far in the direction of species that aren't native to our gut. So when you're taking a probiotic, that's not necessarily something that exists in your gut, so you can actually disrupt your native microbiome. So there's some negative effects in some cases for people taking probiotics. So I don't recommend that. Prebiotics just basically means fiber. So yes, eat more fiber. It's good for your health. It can, various types of fiber are important. It's important to understand the fiber types. I think this is something that just isn't discussed enough in nutrition overall. And I have a podcast episode, it's like 30 or 40 minutes, kind of discussing viscous versus, non-viscous fiber, and soluble and insoluble, and fermentable and non-fermentable, because we have to understand, fiber isn't just fiber. There is various types of fiber, and they all do different things. And there's some fiber that have almost no benefits, and actually, as I mentioned, can have some harmful effects in some cases. And there's other fibers that pretty much are responsible for most of the benefit that we get from fiber. Like these viscous soluble fibers are the ones that seem to lower blood glucose, improve cholesterol levels, improve stool, mass, and constipation and diarrhea. And so, yes, eat more fiber, but we do have to understand the types of fiber that we're eating, and make sure that we're focusing on the right types of fiber as well.
Following that up, So what do you think about the ratio of soluble fiber and insoluble fiber when we're thinking about someone with a state of like acute diarrhea? Like if we want to reduce that situation, what sort of ratio of these fibers would you recommend, or would you just remove like all fibers altogether?
So it depends on the situation. In some cases, you probably want to go into like removing most of the fiber and going on a very bland diet. The reason the fiber can be problematic is these insoluble fibers. What they do is they mechanically they kind of irritate the lining of the gut,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how they help. Like that's how they help produce more bowel movement. So insoluble fibers, they're promoted, and they can be helpful for this reason. Is they're promoted for helping to increase the number of bowel movements that we have, but they do so based on the fact that they kind of irritate the digestive tract, and that mechanically stimulates the contractions in the gut that help things get moving along. And so if someone's experiencing intestinal inflammation, they're experiencing like diarrhea, acute bout of any type of gastroenteritis, it's probably going to worsen things. And so I would definitely avoid those types of foods, and that's whole grains and beans and lentils and nuts and those type of things. You might need to kind of reduce the consumption of those for a bit, and then increase the thing that you would want to increase consumption of that could probably help with kind of regulating those bowel movements is the soluble fiber, like you mentioned. But it really just depends on the case, but in most cases probably avoid fiber just because it's difficult to get the right types of fiber in.
Would you select some specific foods that are mostly predominantly soluble fiber? So for example, like rice. I see like a lot of people give cold rice or psyllium husks or a type of soluble fiber that will just create that gel that may slow down that motility if you have like an episode of diarrhea or loose bowels.
Yeah. So psyllium husk is the best thing there. Rice doesn't really have any fiber if you're using white rice, but it's if you're cooling it, then like we talked about earlier, it's going to have some of that resistant starches. The resistant starches won't create like that viscous kind of consistency like the soluble fibers will. So that's really the soluble fibers are the the superstars in terms of fiber. Insoluble fibers have less benefits overall. Like the benefits of fiber are largely attributable to the soluble fibers, and so we definitely and that's why I put out a whole episode about it on my podcast. Is like I really think it's helpful to understand the various types of fiber, mainly if you're dealing with digestive issues. If you're not,
Yep.
you can tolerate all types of fiber pretty well. Like I can eat, tons of insoluble, soluble. Your gut will handle all of that pretty well in most cases, and it should be able to handle all that pretty well. But if you're experiencing, digestive issues, that's when, really dialing into the types of fiber that you're eating can be really, really helpful.
Another interesting question that I got was with constipation, do you need more of these things like movement or more water or more fiber or a bit of everything, or you should go and take laxatives? Which one?
Definitely more of all of the water, fiber, the right types of fiber, movement. Make sure that you get it checked out if you have like serious constipation. Because I've worked with I work with people who have serious digestive issues sometimes, and in some cases it's an actual physical obstruction of some sort that needs to be addressed. And people are trying to take laxatives, change their diet, do all sorts of different things in terms of dietary changes and supplements, when in reality there's some physical issue that needs to be addressed that hasn't been identified because they haven't got the proper medical care. So when things if you have like real digestive issues like that, definitely make sure and get all of that tested. And it's probably less common there. The US is different. You go to the doctor and you have no idea what your bill is going to be later on, so people just avoid it for the most part, and it's definitely less so the case with individuals outside of the US, because I work probably 30 to 40% of my clients, probably more than that, have been outside of the US, and it's so much easier. Like healthcare is so much easier in the countries that have kind of universal healthcare.
Now, when I think about like working with clients on doing a fat loss phase, we know that there are fluctuations on a day-to-day basis based on what we eat, based on what is going on throughout the day. If we eat more fiber, less fiber, more sodium, more carbohydrates, like all of these things are going to affect your weight on a net number. Now, when you start increasing your fiber intake, do you feel or do you see a difference in potential weight fluctuations based on the type of fiber you consume? Because obviously soluble fiber may attract or hold on to more water than the insoluble fiber. But I've read in some situations that people with eating soluble fiber can even, like the actual fiber intake can hold up to 10 times the amount of water that you're consuming versus the insoluble fiber that will just be like 1-to-1 ratio, something like that. So what do you know about these, and sort of like put some additional light on this topic, especially for those that are starting their journey and they freak out with their weight fluctuations, but it looks like they're just making better choices.
Yeah, yeah. So you can definitely, I mean, especially if you're drinking more water, you're eating more fiber, you're going to see some increase there with, it's not going to be substantial, but yeah, it can definitely be, 1 to 2 pounds or up to like a full kilogram of additional weight. I haven't looked at the, actual data. I don't think there's actually data on this, but yeah, if you're eating more soluble fiber, basically soluble fiber, what it does is it sucks water into it and turns into a gel. And that's why it's beneficial, is because that gel softens our stool. It binds to cholesterol particles in our intestines and helps to eliminate them. That's how it reduces our cholesterol. It slows down our digestion, so that's how it slows glucose, like blood glucose response. And so those are the reasons, like that gel formation is why the soluble fibers are so beneficial, but they will increase stool mass, and they're going to increase the amount of, they could cause like an increase in weight when you started to increase more fiber. And for some people, they're also, especially early on, you're going to probably feel a little bit more bloated. You're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, especially like you're going to be holding more stool, so you're probably going to feel a little bit more bloated. And then also your microbiome takes time to adjust. Your intestines take time to adjust because fiber it's undigestible. So that's a lot of the benefits, or all the benefits, come from the fact that we don't digest it, and it changes the environment in our gut, and then also provides a fuel source for the microbes in our gut. So we haven't really talked about that, but fiber also, we mentioned that kind of briefly with the prebiotics, but fiber provides a fuel source for the microbes in our gut. And so, that's where it has all the benefits through the fact that it is, goes unabsorbed.
I agree. Would you choose for your client that has not a very healthy relationship with the scale to weigh daily for like exposure therapy and actually start realizing that it's better to have more data overall and being able to just get used to that normal fluctuations are fine and understand perhaps the reason why the weight is fluctuating, or just get them to just weighing once a month or never at all?
It depends on the person. So I like these apps where you can just step on the scale and it'll go straight to your phone, and it'll like store it. And so what I recommend for some of my clients is like, because I do think, like you mentioned, the exposure is good, but sometimes at first it's really difficult for them to step on, and it can ruin their whole day. Is I'll say just put tape over it, step on the scale, you don't see it, it just tracks the data, and then you check in a couple of weeks, and you can see the day-to-day fluctuations plus the averages, and you don't have to see the day-to-day in the real time, but you get to see later on, oh wow, there was all these fluctuations, and I was down 2 pounds over 2 weeks, and it was, crazy, and that'll help them, like that first step. So I've recommended that as well, but I think I think daily weighing can really help for that, especially if you have it on an app of some sort that's going to give you the trend, because I think that's, I mean, and even if you're not doing it daily, I think these new apps that have like this, the the new scales that are connected to the apps that have the trends that save all your data are like really I think they're the solution for a lot of people, because you can just look back and see like, okay, I see all these crazy, like I showed my last year on one of these apps, and like I was 215, now I kind of stay at like 200, and that was over the course of like 10 months. And I wasn't like I never like diet hard or anything like that. I just eat a little bit less snacks, and it slowly will start to come off as it does. And for like, if you look at the fluctuations for mine, because I wasn't like, super dialed in or dieting hard or anything like that, my fluctuations were crazy. But over the 10 months, it just consistently goes down if you zoom out. And that's, it's really, it helps for people to see that and just come to terms with that. And then the other piece with this is, too many people are just too focused on the scale, too focused on weight, too focused on
Mm-hmm.
appearance. We fitness community, fitness industry, nutrition, the health industry as a whole, medical system, like we just kept giving people a distorted view of what healthy is. Like, it isn't having a six pack. It isn't, having a BMI of under 25. Like, the data, I'm about to post a video on that. The data doesn't even show that that's the best place to be. Like, the overweight category, quote unquote, 25 to 29, is pretty much like consistently associated with better health outcomes than the normal weight category, which is 14 to 25, or 18.9 to 25, or 18.7, or something like that. And so, a lot of people are striving and struggling with the scale because they're trying to achieve a result that is just unrealistic and isn't healthy and isn't really based on anything besides societal programming and insecurity sometimes that come from a variety of different places. And, in my opinion, I'd like to see more people, yes, come to terms with the changes, but also just like come to terms with like healthy lifestyle doesn't equal a goal weight. And there's more to it than that.
And at the end of the day, look, if the weight fluctuates, and this is something that I talk to my clients all the time, if you're doing the right thing, you know that you are in the right path. So like, if you know that you're tracking your calories accurately, that you are training, that you're honoring your sleep, that you are really adhering to your nutrition, even if the scale fluctuates, because I see it like, and I have been able to realize this even more in practice during this prep that I am in.
Oh yeah.
My weight fluctuates sometimes because I eat a lot more fiber and a lot more of volume foods because I'm hungry. And I see how some days I wake up 2 kilos heavier. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this just in your brain won't make sense. But at the end of the day, when you start analyzing the things that you're doing right, and like, there's nothing that you could say is wrong with the things that I'm doing. So there's no way this is the indicator that my weight or my body is broken or that something is wrong. It's just literally volume and like body water or stools or like a lot of extra stuff that is in your body that has nothing to do with body fat. And the biggest thing is just to keep doing the right thing, keep going. Just don't stress so much about what the number of the scale says. If you can give some context to it and understand what's happening behind the number on the scale. So yes, I absolutely agree with you in that.
Yeah, and you're talking about it from a prep perspective, but I also think people should develop this like from a
Yeah.
long-term lifestyle perspective. It's like, for me, I have just certain things that I just do on a regular basis, and I'm not crazy about, I live a really like flexible lifestyle in terms of, my nutrition and everything, and I just, eat certain, like I try to eat, I have a pattern of eating, I eat 3 meals a day, 1 to 2 snacks, about the same size meals. I eat things that I enjoy on a regular basis. I try to get enough protein. I don't even like, not too crazy about that. I probably hit like 150 a day and I'm, 200 pounds, so I'm not even like too crazy about that one. Like, it's just because I've been doing this for a while. Like, I've been living this lifestyle for 20 years now, almost. Like, since I was 18 years old, I got really into bodybuilding and stuff, and like ate all the protein, did the really strict diets, and through my 20s, did all of that, did the detoxes and supplements, and then I had a kid, and you just like you have to learn balance at some point, and you have to learn how to approach this in a way that is going to be sustainable, and it goes back to what you just said, is like having those things that you consistently do. And it doesn't have to be too crazy. For me, I try to do some type of movement pretty much every day. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. I don't stick to any type of lifting schedule, like routine at all. Like, I just do whatever I feel like doing on that day. And like pretty much every day in the morning, and like, so that's, I do that. I stick to a generally healthy nutrition pattern, mostly on processed foods, making sure that I get enough protein, not trying to overeat. Sleep, I have a bedtime. After I put my son to sleep, I go to sleep, and then I just wake up whenever I wake up. I don't ever have to set an alarm because I just wake up super early because I go to sleep early. And so like I just stick to these really simple things on a regular basis, and I don't have to be too crazy about it. I go out to eat with friends when I want to go out to eat with friends. I go out for a drink when I want to if I feel like doing that. I'm like really, really flexible with things, and it really helps if you can put that together for sustainability long term, in my opinion, because a lot of people do that for the short term, and are trying to lose weight. They have these standards, and then they don't know what to do after that. And I think really a lot of people need to learn, because if you just you don't need to go through these crazy patterns. If you just do the kind of
Basics.
the basic stuff for years, like, you're going to get those results. It's just you're not going to see results quickly. It's going to take 6 months for you to see, where you're starting to have to buy new clothes and stuff, and a year before everyone's saying, oh wow, you look completely different. It's not going to be a 12 week or 6 month transformation. But most people who are doing the 12 week and 6 month transformations are gaining it all back anyway. Like, and they're doing it multiple times, and they're gaining or losing the weight in 12 weeks, and then getting it back and losing it and gaining it back. And it's like, if you can just put these little pieces in place, and you don't even have to put them all in place at one time. And, so a lot of times I kind of promote that side of things, because, everyone, a lot of the messaging around the fitness industry is, this really detailed, dialed in approach, which is great. And it's good to do. And I've done that, and I do it sometimes still occasionally. But, for most people, for the long term, like, we're going to have to eat forever. Like, we're gonna have to do these things for the rest of our life. We got to figure out a way that we can approach this healthy lifestyle in a way that's manageable, that doesn't take over our lives. And
feels easy. That feels easy. And one thing that I would say that is aligned with what you're saying is that there are some patterns, behaviors, and habits that you should strive to make them your default. So it's basically what you're doing. It just doesn't require much thinking. It's just more automatic. Like, you literally, is part of what you do. It's part of your lifestyle. Like, eating protein at every meal. Like, this is a no-brainer. It's not like I don't have to think about it. Or
with
same
that,
with,
so along
yeah,
with that, so here's the other side of it, though, because I know a lot of people do that. It's also completely okay if you have a meal with no protein at all. Like,
exactly.
completely fine.
Yep.
Like, it's not going to be a big deal if you're looking at it long term. If you think, oh, I have to get everything I need, most results in 4 weeks that I can, you're never going to be like, it's going to be hard to ever develop that healthy relationship. And
Exactly.
because I see so many people that, yeah, they're there and they're doing it, and they've learned to get protein in every meal, but they're scared to eat a meal without it. And they're to that point where
Yep.
it's like, it becomes neurotic. And at the end of the day, these little things don't matter. Like, we eat over 1,000, we eat 1,100 meals a year if you're eating 3 meals a day. Like, one meal makes no difference in the grand scope of.
And same with vegetables. Like, if you don't eat vegetables from one day, like, it is not the end of the world. It's not that you already eat unhealthy.
Yeah, exactly. like literally some meals I will go downstairs and I'm like, I have like a leftover rotisserie chicken in the fridge, and I'm like, there's nothing else that I feel like eating, and that's all I eat with like some barbecue sauce for lunch. And like, yes, that is not my normal meal at all. That's rare. That doesn't happen very often, but like, that's okay. Or some meals it'll be the other way around. I'll just snack on a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like I just had a bunch of snacks, and I'm just gonna wait till dinner now. Now, making that a habit is not a good thing. But when you have good habits in place and you built them, you can like and that's where sometimes just creating stronger rules and giving yourself a period of time, like for the next 30 days, the next 45 days, the next 60 days, I'm gonna try to stick to this 90% or more. But once you build those habits, you make them a part of your life, it really helps not to get too, cornered in by your healthy lifestyle that it takes away from actually living.
I agree. Now let's move to a much fun part of this conversation, which is for or against, and what would be your final verdict.
Okay.
So let's start with CGMs for weight loss.
Completely against.
For or against?
Completely against. Yes. This is pointless.
Okay. Ozempic for weight loss. For or against?
Circumstances. For in the right circumstances, for sure.
Do you believe like a lot of people that are using Ozempic beyond the need of like truly needing to lose weight because there's like an actual issue? Like I've seen people bringing that up to like contest prep or like just losing weight for aesthetics. What is your standpoint on that?
Yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, I think generally our society around physical appearance and stuff is just people are willing to do whatever. Like, and there's unfortunately people will take medications that have harmful side effects to lose aesthetic body weight. I mean, I think when I hear this and people are making a big fuss about it, I'm like, these people are getting like their whole body redone in terms with surgery, and I feel like Ozempic is probably has less side effects than that. And it seems like people are more worked up about the medication than all these people getting surgery left and right and all these other things that people are doing for weight loss. I mean, yeah, I think in general our society is chasing this vanity weight entirely too much, and you have to get there. Like, and you'll be able to, I mean, you can speak to it as like you have to get there to realize like it's not as exciting as it seems, to get to a really lean body weight, or and get to it like going through contest prep and looking a certain way. Like, it looks great from the outside, but you lose your libido, you're exhausted, you're hungry, you're tired, you're craving food all the time, and it's like you have to find that other side of like where things are really a little bit more sustainable there. And yeah,
I was going to add like, yeah, you can get there, and once you get there, like you feel like once you get there everything's going to be amazing and like your life is going to change, and once you get there you're actually still feeling pretty shitty and still unhappy about everything because you didn't really change or address what truly makes you happy or what is truly filling the void of actually feeling successful on having achieved something just beyond the number of the scale or just a physique. Yes, physique, looking good naked is important for everyone. I suppose that it is part of like the human nature, but at the end of the day, if it's bringing health challenges or if it's just making you all the time hungry or feeling miserable or not being able to train or have the energy to do a really good session at the gym, like what's the point of just having a ripped body and having just like feeling like death? Sometimes I'm just like walking and I'm not that lean yet, and I feel like I'm just going to pass out at some point. I feel like
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
just,
like personally, I can get to, under 10% body fat where I'm like super ripped and it's miserable. And I see people on, social media maintaining that. And, most of them, it's either genetics or they're using performance enhancing medications in most cases where they just have, certain genetics. And it's, other people are striving for it because they see it and they're like, oh, wow, that person can do it. And I want to try to do that too. And they don't realize like, you probably don't. Like you probably don't want to do everything that goes into that. It's much more enjoyable to because it's elusive. Like you're gonna chase it and you're never gonna get there, and you're always gonna feel you're gonna exercise and eat just to look a certain way, and so you're gonna have a negative associate. Like it's not even gonna be fun. It's gonna be like just to look a certain way, and then you don't actually get there, and so it's just gonna mess with you. And like for a lot of people, like looking at certain people and then trying to do that and try to kind of look like them for in a lot of cases, I think causes more mental health issues as opposed to saying, you know what, I'm going to approach this from living a healthy lifestyle and I'm going to start walking more and I'm going to feel better because as soon as I start doing that, I'm going to feel better. And it's just a snowball of positive benefits as opposed to when you go the other direction where it creates this. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've worked with and spoken to and colleagues, over the years, because I've been in this field since, since I was, graduated high school for the most part. And so many people have gotten really into it to a deep degree. And it's caused a lot of mental health issues in terms of really not being able to like feeling stuck where you have to like always maintain this physique like or you're like a failure because that's another thing with the contest prep like you mentioned is once you look that way everything else is like you feel like oh now you feel quote unquote fat even if you're like pretty lean because you've gotten to a point where you're like extremely lean and that can mess with people too in terms of like really chasing after that physical thing. I think this is in my head because I posted about this earlier about like chasing after the physique side of things because it really is just it can be there's positive and negative to it in terms of doing that and I think when you focus on just living a healthy lifestyle
yeah,
and there's it's just a snowball of positivity. You start exercising and you feel good about it and your body feels better. You mentally you feel better because you actually did something positive and you like you can achieve that. Once you start doing that is like you okay, 7 days, you exercise 7 days, you feel good about the fact that you actually got up and did that as opposed to like, oh, I'm on the scale and I stepped on and it still doesn't say what I want it to say. So I'm disappointed today again. Like every single day you're disappointed, a lot of times because you're like, the scale still doesn't say what I want it to say as opposed to like, oh, I got up and worked out today. I feel good about that. It's just
yeah,
a change in the mindset. And I think a lot of people, especially when you're getting started early on, kind of trying to navigate this, it really helps to approach it with this, the other side of things of just let me focus on the lifestyle habits. Let me focus on being healthy. Let me focus on these things. And if you do want to get really dialed into it at some point, there's nothing wrong with that. I've gone through those phases myself, and there are times where I sometimes will, even now, but it's just not where you want to live. Is really
yeah,
the thing. And
exactly.
a lot of people start there and they get pulled into there early on, and then they try to live there, and it's just not sustainable.
Now, let's talk about, I don't know if you do much around this, but Dutch testing for hormones, for or
So,
against.
so against, I am not well versed in this, but I follow a lot of really smart endocrinologists that are, and apparently the saliva tests are just not accurate at all. So it ends up giving you a lot of inaccurate data that is really difficult to interpret, and it's really expensive.
Okay. What about processed foods? And in this sense, I'm going to be more specific. So we have ultra-processed meats, cold meats, curated meats, sausages. Are you for or against these foods overall?
Okay, these foods, so ultra processed or processed meats are classified as a class 1 carcinogen. And this is because this category of foods has consistently been associated with higher rates of colon cancer. It's about 18% increased risk for, I think it's 50 grams per day consumption, which is just a couple of ounces. And so I, I would recommend minimizing your consumption of this category of foods. Now, the challenge is this category contains a wide variety of foods that are just very different in terms of nutritional quality. So you have like bacon and sausage and spam and potted meat and things like that in the same categories like deli meat and turkey and some other less processed options that would be lower in sodium, that would be lower in saturated fat, that would have less additives and things like that. So in my personal opinion, and some people disagree with me because this can't be strongly supported by data, but I would not put the deli meats into the category with the rest of these foods. Like I would say that deli meats in general are probably okay, but like the data, there's not data to support that statement because in the way that these studies are designed, when they ask about these foods, they lump them all into one category. So a lot of people strongly recommend against deli meat because it is included in this category and because this category of foods overall is associated with higher rates of colon cancer. But I would say, I wouldn't really worry too much about deli meats. I had a sandwich earlier today that was absolutely delicious. And speaking of, I had a sandwich with chips on it today, and I hadn't done that since I was like, I don't know how long. It's been a long time, and it was so good. I was like, I'm probably gonna do this like every day now for like a week.
All right. Another one that I am interested to ask you, and I think this is a very common one, is leaky gut. I think it is more common than we think, but it is like a bit of a buzzword at the moment. Like, oh, it's just attributed. If you see that you have a struggling to lose weight or you have a lot of bloating, you have leaky gut. Like it's just like you've got a problem.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about this?
Yeah, leaky gut is a medical, so the medical term is increased intestinal permeability or intestinal hyperpermeability. When people online are using the term leaky gut and they're saying, if you have hormone imbalances or if you're fatigued or if you have cravings and they put all these random symptoms together and then they try to tell you you have leaky gut, like unfollow those people, block them, avoid their content at all costs. This is a strategy in this space is you just tell people, you put together a collection of random symptoms. You say, if you have hormone issues, if you have trouble sleeping, if you're fatigued, if you experience weight gain, if you have cravings, and then you claim that it's due to one thing that you have a solution for. So people will say, oh, if that's the case, you have leaky gut, and then they claim to have a solution for it. So they'll tell you to follow them, and they'll tell you they have certain methods or whatever. So people have no idea what they're talking about. If you're taking information from people about this topic, they better at least have, at the very minimum, like a master's degree studying nutrition or GI diseases or something like that, because this is difficult to understand. I've read dozens and dozens of papers on this topic, and there's so much that goes into increased intestinal permeability, the various things that can cause it, the ways that it can be treated. It can't really be treated, really. You just have to get rid of the underlying cause of it. And so this leaky gut is not a syndrome like you see online where people say leaky gut syndrome. Increased intestinal permeability can occur as a result of digestive issues that you have. So like it happens because of underlying digestive issues. It's not like something that is causing all these other issues that you need to treat.
I agree. Now, I am aware of your time, so I want to use this last question, and I'm just looking for the right one because I don't want to waste that last one. So we hear a lot that middle age and menopause will cause issues with weight, and you will have a slower metabolism and more insulin resistance. How true is this, and whether do you advocate or do you think women after menopause or like during perimenopause should modify their carbohydrate intake, reduce their carbohydrate intake?
Yeah, definitely not. There's no evidence to suggest that reducing carbohydrate intake has any benefits for women going through like in perimenopause. Definitely work with a physician and, to make sure that you're getting any type of hormones that you need and like to help with those symptoms, because that's really the main thing that can be helpful is getting your hormones tested and getting them, taking whatever exogenous hormones you need to help deal with some of those symptoms in terms of like symptom management. Now, when you mentioned the weight loss, and sometimes women experience weight gain during this phase of time, it isn't necessarily due to reductions in metabolism. Oftentimes, it's due to the changes in hormones that lead to the symptoms that cause poor sleep, that cause fatigue, that leads to less energy expenditure, that leads to more snacking. And it's these downstream effects of some of these, other symptoms that are causing some of, if you're tired, fatigued, you're having mood swings, you're having hot flashes, you're not sleeping well, you're probably not going to move as much, and you're probably going to eat a little bit more. And, that's part of what can contribute to it. Now, the hormones can play a role, and that's why I said it's really important to make sure that you're working with a doctor to get any of that addressed so that you can reduce symptoms. And then also if it's impacting your energy expenditure, cravings or anything like that, it can be helpful to get that addressed.
I totally agree. Well, it's been awesome to catching up with you, Adrian. It's awesome to always see you and just having these conversations, because this just increases awareness. And I think the more we can talk about these controversial topics, I guess brings more of, I think, peace to a lot of people that are battling against misinformation and like this controversial information that you don't really know what to believe in. So I think the more we can do it, the better. And you are doing an amazing job in your page. So thank you for that. And I appreciate for you to come here today.
Definitely, thank you. And I agree. I think, nutrition, fitness, it should enhance your life. It shouldn't be something that is, overwhelming and causes anxiety and all of that. So that's why, I really try to approach it from that way. And on here is really help people to kind of calm down a little bit in the way that we kind of look at things, because I get Q&As all the time, and people are just anxious about things and overthinking things, and it really doesn't have to be that complicated. The basics really are what matter the most.
I agree. Well, you have a beautiful night, and this is going to be in our feed. So if you guys need to rejoin to watch the entire thing, come and watch it. It's also going to be moved to my YouTube channel if you want to give it a go and watch it again there, timestamps and everything. But it's going to be available here in the meantime. So thank you, Adrian, and I hope you have a beautiful day.